Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Tone, it's Monday night, and it looks like you've had a terrible weekend with Mike Tyson. I hope he looks worse than what you do.
It was a left or right rip hook combination that got me in the end, Dave.
He dropped you.
A bit of advice for all our listeners: use sunscreen
And the broad brim hat.
and go to your dermatologist or GP once a year. Get all your little moles checked out, because little dots on your nose, which look rather innocent, can be actually quite harmful, and I can assure you can leave a bit of stress in your life for a few days. But all good, Dave. On other big news, I've had a bit of a relationship issue today, actually. It brought it to the head, and I've now resolved that. I've cancelled my subscription to ChatGPT.
Wow.
I'm now subscribing to Claude.
Why'd you get off ChatGPT?
There's a few people at work and some directors at work who use Claude, right? It just seems a little bit better.
Which, by the way, I've never heard of Claude.
Yeah.
So who's doing Claude?
Anthropic, some mob.
Right.
Yeah, but they're obviously pretty big. They're the ones who had the contract with the US.
Right.
And they had a bit of a barney with, I think, the Secretary of War.
Being a tight ass, I don't subscribe to any. Mind you, I don't have a dire need for a subscription, but I run it across Gemini, Grok, ChatGPT anyway.
Yeah, so for me, it was just a bit of a change of view, a change of position. Now, Dave.
Speaking of change of position.
What are we talking about tonight?
Well, Tone, there's also, as we record, the new supreme leader in Iran is DJ Trump. We have confirmation that the Ayatollah is dead. He died like a dog. So the Ayatollah's gone, which lends itself on what's going on. You and I love that stuff, and lends itself to we could do a whole episode, but we're going to leave it and see what comes out of it. We're going to have a different tack, and we're going to move back to our sort of philosophical topics and questions, and we're going to delve into a question that gets asked often of first, second year law students, which is, as a hypothesis, a hypothetical, I should say, should there be professional jurors? Now, obviously, one of the essence of our Western legal system is, should you be before the courts, your judgment will come about for a jury of your peers, but that is fraught with all kinds of problems and dangers. So
stupid is what stupid does.
Yeah, and look, this is part of being a good criminal or defense lawyer, is being able to read a panel and pick and knock out those that you think is not going to get you the favorable outcome. But that's the problem, right?
Yeah, this is really interesting, this topic, Dave.
I only do interesting topics, Tone. I only have interesting friends.
Like, where do you stop in terms of the professionalization of some of this stuff, right? Should we only get professional people who are trained to vote?
And the answer to that is simply no, but it's the same basis.
That's right. Right.
It's the exact same
basis.
Because
I like the idea. You're pinged on a charge, you front up to court, and there's 12 people, your peers, randomly picked, who are going to assess the facts, right? And then based on those facts and based on the theater of the courtroom, everything else that happens, and their own perceptions and their own bias and their own history and their own axes to grind, are going to reach a decision, right?
See, deep inside you, you're a romantic.
That's right.
Because you like to think that they're going to make a decision based on the facts.
Oh, no. That's why I said fact.
Yeah.
And then based on their bias, previous experience, what they think happened,
yes,
what looking at that defendant looks like they would have done. If they're
that's a big one.
If they didn't do what they're charged with, if they didn't do what they're charged with doing, they would have done something else.
Yep.
All right. That type of mentality is the reason why
you
need a level of professionalism, and that is the right term in terms of jurors. But at the same time, I feel uncomfortable with it. I like the idea. There's 12 people randomly selected, and God knows, Dave, I have avoided jury duty to this year. What is it? 54, turned 55 in June, and I've managed to avoid it. I get on the rolls and I get off the rolls, work commitments, whatever it might be, but I could not imagine going through that process. But there's something really, really democratic about a group of 12 people determining the fate of a defendant. But when you start thinking about where those 12 people come from, right?
And this is the problem.
Are they looking at me going, and maybe looking at my surname going, bloody wog, right?
I do.
That's right.
I'm like, why have I got a wog for a partner
That's
in
right.
my podcast?
So, and that's what concerns me. But then I don't like the idea, Dave.
It all depends, Tone.
So Dave,
if there's 12 Italians on that,
that's right.
that plays.
That's right.
And here in the essence of the problem, right? If you're depending on who you are, if you're a woman that's hoping for a conviction on a rape, right? Obviously, you're hoping to have 12 women up there that would look like you and they're going to believe your story. And I say story before we get hate mail. What I mean is, that's what you're telling. You're telling your story of the event. And you'd like to think when people are being honest and true, they're going to get the outcome and the justice they deserve. But what are you going to want? If you've got an accusation up there, do you really want to see 12 young football type men, the weekend away where some of this stuff gets blurred and these issues arise? It's not the panel you want. So obviously your legal representative is going to try and manipulate the process as legally as possible to impanel a jury that's likely to give you the favorable outcome.
Absolutely. And I think,
and you'd like to think with a professional jury that wouldn't happen.
I know, but even again, Dave, so let's just say we train jurors. There's a Cert 4 at TAFE, advanced jury duty.
I'd like to think it'd be more than Cert 4.
I'm being a bit facetious. We're starting a low baseline, Dave.
Yeah.
There's a Cert 4, but you actually can go and do a grad dip or something in how to be a juror, right? Now, but
is there anything precluding you from being on this jury, Mr. Lodge? No, I've played hangman lots, Your Honour.
That's right. But if I look, Dave, at other professions that are trained lawyers, engineers, accountants, whatever it might be, it's not as if those industries and those professions have been clear of any ethical missteps in the history of the world, right?
They have, Tone.
So I think
professionals, there's no ethics required. They're inherently moral. They always do the right thing. Just looking at banking sector.
What I think the jury, as opposed to going professional, I think jurors being told as part of the process where they're going through jury duty, I'd actually give them a 3 to 4 hour course on what's expected of them in terms of understand the facts, not your bias, not previous experience, not what you think's happened, facts. Listen to the facts, right? I'm not sure if that happens because I can only imagine, Dave.
Well, that's part of the picture that'll be painted by prosecutor or defense, right? That'll be part of your thing. This case rests on the facts of the case are. This is not about the emotion. This is not about that he grew up of wealth. This is about the facts of the 9th of the 19th. That's what they will do, right?
I know.
That's what a good courtroom lawyer will be able to do. And a clearest example of this is the mistake when they admitted the glove into the O.J. Simpson trial, because that's the point in which the whole thing falls apart. And there was advice for the prosecution not to admit the glove with the blood on it. And I don't know, I can't recall exactly whether they had a feeling that he might have used things that are undersized or what. Just there was advice not to do it. They went against it, and when they've asked him to put on the glove and he's trying to put it on, it's just way too small. It doesn't fit. And of course, it gives rise to the very famous, "If the glove don't fit, you must acquit."
That's right.
So there are moments in a courtroom where the ability to hammer home to a jury your version will supersede any training you can provide anyway. That's only of 3 or 4 hours. I'd like to think if I was going to go down the path of making changes to jurors, I think I'd investigate one of two things: a minimum age, because I'd like to think you've got a certain level of maturity brings with you the way in which you will attempt to listen to the facts and there's less emotion in your decision making. Now, I'm not naive. We have whole genders that are more emotional than others. And by genders, I'm not saying there's a spectrum and you can be anything. There's not. There's two. What I mean is women are far more emotional, but men can be far too black and white. So I'd like to think that with age, some of that stuff gets mitigated, or the possibility of a mixed jury. So you might have six professionals.
Are you supporting some type of gender-based quota for the production?
No. What I'm saying is,
I'm shocked.
What I'm saying is the reality are that we have emotion.
That's right.
And we have others. So
I get it.
So I don't want 6 and 6. I don't want that at all. Even though this subjectivity of your peers, how do we define peers? Is it peers because you got the same skin color, the same eye shape, you grew up in the same postcode? Like it's so subjective, right? Because you could sit there, highly unlikely, but extreme example. You could be from Sydney's West, stolen 10 cars and got caught, and you get a jury that's impaneled that all went to Joey's Barker Shore. They're not your fucking peers.
Yeah.
Right. But in the eyes of the court. The other thing that's interesting too is we have this thing we say everyone's equal under the law. That's actually not factually correct. And I'm not talking about how much law can you afford? Yeah, that saying, if obviously you got deeper pockets, you can pursue things or defend things. There are different standards in which people are held based on your things like your IQ, your profession, right? So an action of you as a CFO as the same thing that someone else that's got no qualifications will actually not have the same
outcome.
That's right. Now, the test of whether or not it occurred and you're guilty is the difference is the punishment. So in other words, they might get 6 months and you ought to have known better, Tony.
Yep.
So to me, I say, well, I get it. You ought to have known better, but if you're all equal under the law, why is offence X 6 months there and offence X is 24 months here based on their profession, their qualification, their standing in society?
But that does happen a lot in the US.
It happens a lot here. It's actually it's taught. It's not. Yeah. It's not something that happens to occur.
Yep.
It's a legitimate thing. That the expectations of someone that's more educated and better standing, more experienced, that they ought to have known better.
So talk to me, Dave. The jury system and how the jury system's set up hasn't changed in a couple hundred years, right? I don't know, however long, right? Yeah. Like the history of when they decided to go, you know what, stuff the judge, let's get some juries in here.
Well, you can still have, and everything's not done by a jury either.
Oh, no, that's right.
You can have a magistrate, or in the US, a judge that can decide.
That's right.
You don't have to.
But since that time, think about the complexity in terms of evidence, DNA evidence, testing, increasingly social media playing parts, the ability to actually analyze and respond to and then assess different data points, complex data points. Is it tougher now to be a juror than it was 30 years ago?
I think both yes and no.
Go on.
Because I think you're on the money where you would say there's so much more information that'll be put before you as someone attempts to prosecute or defend their case that's way beyond the sort of information you might be exposed to in your daily life. Because you might be a baker, you bake bread, and someone's turning around and talking tech to you, and here's the data out of the black box in the car, and here's the phone ping at this location, and so on and so forth. So in that way, the information and that sort of stuff that you've got to try and take in is probably more difficult. But on the other side of the coin, you would say, well, you'd like to think that's making it better. You'd like to think we've got a more robust, the fact we have DNA evidence, for example, in and of itself, you would like to think makes it easier on a juror rather than we have these 12 witnesses that say they saw a 3-legged black man with 2 hats on, at the intersection at this time. Because it's well known that eyewitness testimony is often very unreliable.
Yeah, true. But Dave, so we've got professional jurors, or the idea of professional jurors who are qualified, trained. I'd even go to the point where I think jurors should be paid more. The actual amount they get to take
that's rubbish.
8 or 10 days out of their time. Yeah. And I'm thinking next level, Dave. I'm thinking, right?
Well, there are some people who have been in 6-month trials.
Right. Work with me on this one. You stream the jury deliberations live on some type of streaming platform.
Gogglebox.
Right? Yeah, that's right. Some type of Gogglebox, right?
See there, popcorn.
And then you can actually start putting bets on what you think's going to happen as it like.
I don't. Sometimes you're so American.
Like the revenue raising
someone's
opportunity.
going to run with this.
The revenue raising opportunity of this is just like, well, what could it be? Not Gogglebox. That's already taken. We'd have to think of something, right?
Well, I can see someone in the US hearing this and going, "We're doing it," because there's a possibility here. If you leave aside the criminal stuff, when you've got the Judge Judy type thing that you've agreed to be on TV. All they've got to do is go, they've already agreed to be on TV, place your bets beforehand.
I know. So instead of
give you
like
a little bio.
Instead of being a Judge Judy, have an old episode of the jury deliberating on the case, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll get the people arguing in there and fighting
but
in
you've
there.
got to place your bets beforehand.
And then, I don't know, just to throw like a bit of a spanner in the works, like, if there's 12 jurors, at the end of every episode, one of the jurors gets voted off the jury.
Well, I'm just imagining getting the bios before you place your bets. You're looking at team lists and you look at form,
And then
you look at Letitia, single mother of 7 children. Works at Costco.
No.
And then you've got the other side. Lavon claims that Letitia, 6'4", failed, running back, and so you've got these bios, these 2 people before it starts.
I know. Let's get back to a bit of seriousness here, please, Dave. So
do we have to?
There is a more complex data set and complex evidence that's available to jurors now. And when it comes to criminal matters where people's lives are literally on the line, right? I would want a level of confidence that if I was in that position and I was sitting in the dock, that the jurors, and I was confident that I was innocent, I would want jurors who understand the whole reason that they're there, and they've been trained and they've potentially done it before to understand fact, obviously from perception. They're not going to get led down a path by either the prosecutor or the defense. I would want a level of confidence that they're not professional, but they call it semi-professional people who've been exposed to that environment before, and not just 12 randoms who are probably thinking, oh, shit, this guy's guilty. I got to pick the kids up at 2:30.
Yeah. Can we wrap this up?
Wrap this up?
Can we start getting the lethal injection ready? Because I've got the 3.
Really? Ham and cheese for lunch?
But when you say semi-pro in my head, I'm just imagining Jackie Moon, Jackie Moon in the juror. So, I've tried the electric chair, Jackie, but it just won't work. But I think
if this person gets found guilty, corn dogs for everyone in the courtroom.
Exactly. But it came about. It is one of those really interesting things that gets thrown up when you're studying law to get obviously an interesting ethical conversation going. But it also has, aside from, you'd like to think that if you've got professional jurors, they're less inclined to be led down the garden path of bullshit. But you would like to think what you're also doing is speeding up the court process, right? Because if you turn around, you've got professional jurors, like as you can turn up, 50 people get called, they're going to need, or let's call it 100 people get called, they're going to need 36 across 3 courtrooms today. They start knocking people out based on whatever reasons they have.
He's bald.
That's it. Gone. He's fat. He's bald. He's middle-aged. He's an opinionated barber. We don't need him. But obviously there are costs involved. So what would happen if you had your professional jurors and suddenly you're about to be impaneled and the advice is, listen, take the plea deal, knock it out, and you all just get dismissed? Well, you'd move those jurors to the next courtroom and so on and so forth. Look, I really like the concept of professional jurors, but I also see it really fraught with danger, because the other thing that the risk I see is the same thing that comes up, and this is something you've said. I'm going to top turnbuckle you here, where you've spoken about as an example. You say, let's be honest here, Trump's base are uneducated for the most part.
Yeah. I stand by that. No, I don't.
No, you're correct.
Yeah.
But here's the problem, right? Because on the data set, that's a statement of fact.
Yeah.
The problem with the statement of fact is this. Firstly, let's leave aside the definition of educated, but let's agree that what we're talking about here is you've been to university, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
actually, no, when I say educated, I don't necessarily just mean that, right? Because like up until 15 years ago, was it 15 years ago, Dave? Had you been to university, or 20?
No.
When was it?
No, they were too stupid to let me. That was, oh shit, that's going back a while. 17 years.
So 17 years, up until 17 years ago, you hadn't been to uni.
That's right.
I didn't think you were dumb.
No.
I thought because you had a sense of who you were, how the world works, people are trying to play you. You know what I mean? No,
Street
I can look
smarts.
through street smarts, right? So there's a level of ignorance and just a touch of ideology there around. No, he can do no wrong. That's who I'm
Correct.
targeting, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
But for our purposes, most people would say educated meaning
Absolutely.
degree up, right? So this is for those people, and you'll see where I'm going. It's a weave. I'm just doing a weave.
Tony.
I'll bring it back. So
After I'm finished with the Ayatollah.
the Supreme Donald Trump, I love it. So if you take the definition of I think I know better because I'm educated, okay, let's run that argument. All right. So does that mean then, do we then rank order the bachelors depending on which university you studied at? What discipline did you study?
Yeah.
And then within that, do we then say, okay, we rank order in your GPA? And then do we say, but a master outranks a bachelor's? And then the same thing, which university and what's your master's and what's your... And then, so because that being the case, right, being serious about it, when people have said that in conversations I've had with them, does that give me the right to say, okay, then shut the fuck up because I outrank you by a country? Have you done your leadership through Harvard? Did you work at, do you have postgrad? So I hate that non-educated. However, in this case, that's the problem it's going to create, right?
Okay, so
Imagine 12 people that think they're better. And by that, I don't mean they have to be super arrogant, but it's like, I'm a professional juror. I studied that. And it's like, imagine being the bricklayer from Penrith going before a jury of 12 pricks like that.
No, and that's the thing. One of the things that, one of the arguments for, it's a couple of arguments I want to speak about in terms of professional juries, consistency and reliability in terms of the decision making to reach a verdict, right? But then one of the advantages potentially is a reduction in bias, but I actually believe it's a reduction potentially in a certain bias. Like you can't.
Yeah, it would be a creation of another.
That's right. And to that exact point you've just raised, right? Where
It'd be a class bias.
like, what's one of the things, Dave, that's when people speak about diversity in organizations,
Jeez, I hate
in
that
clubs,
word these days.
anywhere, right? When people speak about diversity, what's one thing that diversity really should bring its power to is diversity of thought.
That's what diversity
Diversity of
is
experience.
Correct.
Right. And that's where I think the current system is designed, or one of the benefits of the current system is you are going to get different people from different backgrounds. Yes, the single mother. Yes, the corporate. Yes, the retired person. Yes, the guy who's been a labourer. The guy who's been an Uber driver. The guy who was the CEO of AM, whatever it might be. You're going to get diverse people from different backgrounds, and you would think with the diversity and their engagement in the process in terms of being a juror, more often than not, you're going to get consistent, correct decisions. Now, more often than not.
Yeah.
The one time that it's a not could mean that some bloke's heading for the slammer for 30 years.
Well, the one saving mechanism I'd like to think within that is that if we're talking about a jury gets it wrong, or you'd like to think it's in such a way that's appealable, right?
Yeah.
And the appellate court is going to, overturn it. Obviously, until you get to the high court, and then, it is what it is. But you'd think that given our record, we don't tend to have that many convictions we've had to overturn and quash.
No.
Now, when I say that many, I know there's many you can name, but I mean, as a percentage of what's before the courts, the system we have is relatively robust. But I still think there's scope there for maybe some professional jurors to a certain number. So maybe a third of all impaneled juries are professional jurors, and then the rest are your peers. Just something, not necessarily, I don't want it to be the approach that the professional jurors are going to start directing the other jurors.
No.
And I guess this is where, to be honest, for me, where it probably comes from is a frustration of how much our courts cost and how much time is wasted, and freeing them up to get through things more. So that's probably the angle at which I would support, a third, a half, or even full-time jurors. But it's not from the law side. It's not from the fairness side.
I get it. Work with me on this one, Dave. So you said 4 out of 12, a third are professional jurors. What about the use of a facilitator? Who doesn't?
Yeah. Well, you'd think that that's what the judge is doing.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
So this is
because the judge won't. They will be directing their courtroom, right? And they're making sure that if you're leading a witness, or if you're getting to the point that you're, starting to do things you shouldn't, that's where a good magistrate, and I say good, is ensuring their courtroom is running in such a way that that's not taking place.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about, so we've spoken about bias reduction, Dave. You just touched on now efficiency and cost, right?
Yeah, and this is...
Because you can get, you across Australia, I don't know what they even require. I've got no idea what the requirement is in terms of absolute numbers of jurors per week. Who knows in Australia what that number is, right? But you could get, you get the grey army, Dave.
Yeah.
A whole subset of retirees who go, what? I'm happy to be on the juror roll and I'll get paid $120 an hour, whatever it might be.
I wish it was that.
Or whatever it is, right? So you could
I
actually...
think it's like $165 a day, which is quite a loss for most people.
That's right. Because what ends up happening, the company you work for ends up paying you your normal wage.
If you're lucky enough to be in one of those jobs. I got pulled for jury duty, and then it got canned. But I was at the uni at the time, so all that happened is I had to provide them with my check because they paid me the full day anyway.
So do you think, Dave, like a professional jury would reduce costs, potentially shorten trials?
I'd like to think it'd shorten
and
trials.
then reduce the need for like retrials and appeals, potentially?
I'd like to think so.
Okay.
Because you think it would streamline a lot of processes that have a lot of upside in terms of efficiencies and economics. However, I think that's probably a dangerous way to look at our legal system. I think there's definitely scope to look at what are things costing us, how effective and efficient are they?
In the context of a career of doing budgets for large corporates, I can assure you. I've always treated the legal and general counsel as an overhead. Right.
Yeah, they are. Unnecessary, a waste of money.
Dave, let's talk about the case against professional jurors. Juries are meant to reflect the community, Dave.
Yeah, and this is where I think it wouldn't reflect the community. Although on Albo's current plan of 80% of people having a bachelor's degree and higher, which means effectively as long as you're not mentally retarded, you go to uni, you would say it's going to reflect your peers.
He has, I'm just, Dave, and we won't go down too far the rabbit hole, but the fact I am just so deflated about everything in Australian politics at the moment. Even Pauline couldn't keep her mouth shut. She had to go down the rabbit hole of attacking Muslims, right? I thought,
but Pauline's Pauline.
I know.
Right? The ones on Autism Point, that's right.
Yeah.
So she's not doing anything different than she's done.
I know, but all I'm thinking, Pauline, is if you did something different, if you were more nuanced in your discussion, do you understand what you're doing? Anyway, let's not go down that road, Dave. Here's an interesting one, Dave. A professional class, let's just say you had 6 or 8 of 12 or even 4 or 5 of 12. Groupthink is groupthink, Dave. Doesn't matter if you're professional or you're not.
Yeah, I can show you plenty of things of the highly educated that a groupthink. COVID was one of the biggest things ever. In fact, the Nazi Party was chock full of the educated, the doctors and the architects and the lawyers and that class. Yeah, having a supposed education does not stop groupthink.
Oh, no. What about, Dave?
Which gets to an episode we'll record later on how important the dissenters are in a society.
I like to dissent from time to time. Think about this, Dave. Professional jurors would sit repeatedly with the same judges, work within the same institutions, develop informal norms. Power concentration, Dave, is dangerous.
Very, very, very.
Talk me through an example, if you can, of that.
Well, I can imagine what would happen there is it's the old, if it walks like a duck, sounds like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. So I'll give you a bit of a story, because one of the challenges when I was at the University of Sydney, we would see at a particular given time there was a real spike in fake medical certificates. Now, the reason why you'd want a medical certificate for those that haven't studied is for special consideration. So, for example, you say you're unwell, you can't sit your final exam, or you've got a major piece due that you want an extension to, and you've been unwell, you get your doctor's certificate, you'll submit a special consideration application based on the effect of, whatever it is that was impacting you, and you would sit a deferred exam or you get an extension. We had a spike where there were hundreds of special consideration applications that came through from, let's call him Dr. X. So the special consideration team suddenly picked up this pattern. So, of course, they're referring it off to us, and every time they're doing the right thing, which is before they refer it to us, they'd contact the medical practice and say, hi, I'm confirming the validity of this medical certificate issued by Dr. X on Y date. And, of course, this period runs it's getting into hundreds, and they're getting sick of, they're doing. So they run a bulk thing. Oh, okay, what we see is anyone between 1 January, say 2020, and 1 July 2020 that's got one of these certificates from this Dr. X, pull them all, refer them to the SAU. So it gets referred to the SAU. We've got shitloads of work to do. Drafting notice of alleged misconduct, getting sent out. This kid comes for the preliminary assessment with me and my colleague. We sit in there, and I put the allegations to him. And this kid he was Dave 101. It was, I know I haven't done this. I can prove I haven't done this, and I'm going to be super arrogant just like you. And he turns around and he's like, I'll get my Medicare card receipt. I'll get the CCTV footage. He runs through everything he's going to get. I'll send it to you in the next couple of days. He walks out of the room. I said to my colleague, he didn't do it. I said, his medical certificate's legit. She goes, how do you know? I said, listen, I know me. I know how wound up and fuck you I would get if you sit there making false claims. So sure enough, he sends it all through. When we contact SpecCon, they go, oh yeah, we had so many, we just did a bulk report. I said, you can't do that. I said, because 99% of them fine, but you're going to get the wrong one. So in this situation where these informal processes, oh, here we go, another one. Yeah. He stole 10 cars. He's out of Penrith before the courts, blah, blah, blah. We know how this is going to go. Don't we judge? Yeah. And it turns out that's mistaken identity, or, the kid used to steal cars. He's been out of it. And you've got a bunch of cops that are just too lazy to do their jobs. Oh, another car's gone. Must be Tommy Smith. Yeah. And off they go and get him.
That's the one that kind of concerns me, Dave, where, that 1 or 2 out of 100 or 1,000 who get pinged and get nailed.
And this is, herein lies the problem when you're doing things that, yes, 99 times out of 100, the person before you did it. But if you're going to start creating a situation where informal processes arise and you're not even going to go through the proper process and start to dot the I's, cross the T's, as monotonous as it is, to make sure your evidence is correct and clear, the charges were laid appropriately, any evidence was quarantined that needed to be, all these different things, and you get to a courtroom and you got jurors and a judge with an informal process. Hey, how were the kids in the weekend? You don't want that.
I know. Dave, professional training doesn't remove bias, it reshapes it. So we spoke about that, just a different type of bias. So in the same way that groupthink and almost like intellectual arrogance might occur.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of that in the modern West.
The first time I came across it was, I remember 20 years ago, I was, 10 years into the career, and I'd come across IT people on the cusp of the .com, that became the .bomb. And every time I spoke to them, it was as if I was being spoken down to. Yeah. Like, this is at a level you don't get, right?
You don't understand.
You don't understand, right? Yeah.
You're just the numbers guy.
And then I came across
we'll come to you when we need you to calculate how much profit we've made.
That's right. And then I've come across similar people throughout my career, and I've also come to the conclusion that it's not everyone, but you do get a level of intellectual arrogance that must be born out of swimming around with the same people where you think you actually know better.
Yeah.
I'll tell you your job. Yeah. You've got no experience in my job and what it means, but I can still tell you what your job is.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a risk, Dave, because in that environment where you've got professional jurors who all they do is jury work, if you did have like a mixed jury of 6 and 6 or 4 and 8, there'd be this, no. Listen to me.
You've been here since 9 a.m.
Yeah.
I've been here since 9/11.
That's right. 7-11.
Never forget.
7-11. So I think that's a risk, Dave.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What about
and I'd like to think within that if we, our current process, you'd like to think with 12 people, there's at least 2 to 4 that are sufficiently confident to ask questions of their peers within that deliberation, that the shared cognition is acting in such a way that, okay, the other 8 might sit there quietly, which happens in groups. We all know this. Yeah, everyone's been in boardrooms, everyone's been in sports teams, whatever. There's 3, 4, 5 in a group that are the vociferous and the others follow. But if you have a good vociferous group that do it the right way, that the challenge that goes on in each other's ideas and thinking, gets to a healthy point.
I reckon I was just imagining you being part of a jury, right? To the point where if someone on
guilty, bro.
If someone on the jury was pissing you off enough, right? You would the whole point of working out whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty would become like an aside for you. And you'd start gaming, right, inside the jury room just to piss off the person who you probably think is a DEI hire of some sort.
100%.
And you couldn't be able to help yourself, would you?
No.
Have you ever seen a movie called Runaway Jury with John Cusack?
No, I've heard of it.
It's a John Grisham book. You should watch it. It's fantastic.
I'll have to have a look.
Hackman's in it as well. Dave, public confidence. If juries become professionalised, defendants may feel judged by the system.
Yes.
Right? As opposed to a group of their
That's
peers.
a really good one. That's a really good way of saying it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what it now becomes. You don't have any external in the system. It's all system.
That's right.
Because
So
now that I think about it, that's probably the only external element that sits within our judicial system.
Which is a check and balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What about in terms of that impact or the fact that it is now like a system? You got these external people who are independently chosen, randomly chosen. When the defendant walks in, as we've just discussed, they feel like there's some of their own potentially looking out for them, as opposed to the judge, the jurors, the prosecutor, people in the room. They're all after me, aren't they?
Well, everyone's already playing a game, right?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, how do people turn up to court? Do they turn up in their flip-flops?
No,
and their
no,
shorts? No, not at all, right? So you wear a suit, you get your hair, if you're smart. Your legal will tell you, so let me do the talking. The prosecutor want to paint you as the worst person there's ever been. Your father may as well have been Hitler, even though you've stolen a pack of gum.
Yeah.
And so everyone's playing a game to a certain degree. And you'd like to think the only ones that aren't are your peers. They're sitting up there, they're frustrated by the police prosecutors' shenanigans or the criminal defense lawyer that's trying to paint the guy with CCTV footage of killing 27 babies and raping 13 women and running over 13 granny is a really nice guy and just misunderstood it.
And you think about it, Dave. These jurors are going to be employed, right?
Yeah.
By who?
Well, that's the next thing. You say, well, we're creating more government.
Oh, that's what I mean. There'll be some government department.
It's creating
legal
more government.
services, the attorney general, whatever.
Yeah.
He's got like
I'm one for small government.
He's got like a cost center where he employs 4,000 jurors to get rolled through. So therefore, who are they accountable to, right?
Yeah.
So are these jurors going to have and I'm not joking here, are they going to have performance reviews? Are they going to have KPIs? Who are they accountable to? The state? So you want jurors who are assessing someone's guilt or innocence to be accountable for their their decisions to a state. Independence matters, doesn't it, Dave?
This is what I want. I want the death penalty brought back. I want jurors paid bonuses on kills. But no, seriously, one thing I do actually want, speaking of KPIs in the judicial system, I want magistrates to have KPIs. I think magistrates should have KPIs based on the number of bail applications they grant and the number of crimes committed by a bailee. So in other words, if you turn around and in a year you've had 1,215 matters before you, and you say we know on average 1% of people will be a repeat offender or whatever the data is.
Yep.
And we're finding that 15% of people you've bailed have offended while on bail. I want magistrates to start to be put on. You're on a performance review. That continues. You'll actually be discharged from
Gonskis.
Because what performance management system do we have for these people? We have nothing. And let's face it, one of the great frustrations of citizens in Western world is the number of people that are bailed that shouldn't be. And how many stories do we see ad nauseum in the news about the guy was on bail that cut a head off, the guy was on bail that killed the kids, the guy was on bail that drove drunk again. So I think it's about time that KPIs come in. But obviously, you make a great point, which is if you had KPIs for jurors, it'd be a mess. I want to see KPIs for magistrates. Some would argue it'd also be a mess because you won't bail him when you won't run the risk.
That's right.
But truthfully, what I'm saying is there has to be a threshold. I'm not expecting every magistrate to get everything right. I don't get everything right. No one gets everything right. But just like we all have KPIs in our jobs, what's wrong with saying, no, once you're over 5% of bailees are being charged while on bail, and it's got to be while on bail. I don't want to say, you got done again 3 years. That's not the judge's problem. He went to prison, he's released, done. But while on bail, I want that metric.
So let me ask you a question, Dave. Would you want a professional jury deciding a political protest case or ordinary citizens weighing conscience and law?
I want all protests banned. I don't. I'm very worried about some of our bans that are going on, to be honest.
Dave, don't even start.
In fact, I think you and I did an episode on should Australia have a Bill of Rights. I'm getting a whole bunch of people lately talking to me about it. I think it's time for it.
Yeah.
And we've got to enshrine that free speech, and we need that definition of free speech to include peaceful protest.
Absolutely, Dave.
And I say peaceful protest. But we also need to clamp down because from the river to the sea and globalise the intifada are incitement to violence, and there's no way around that. That's exactly what Hamas and Hezbollah, who the phrases originated, that's what they call for, the eradication of the state of Israel.
Yeah, but I think for me,
we'll stay out of that.
Yeah, Israel.
And well, this is the other thing.
Unfortunately, like Dave, I could say without any shadow of a doubt, Israel have undertaken the ethnic cleansing of Gaza since October 7. That could be my opinion. Someone could actually go after me for that.
Yeah, and this is something I don't want, right?
But that's the law. That's the law at the moment.
That's right. And this is what's concerning because it really should be, that's not an incitement to violence. That's a critique of the current Israeli government.
That's right.
And it's not anti-Semitic.
No.
Because you're not saying I have a problem with Jews.
No, I don't.
Right? That's legitimate political criticism of what you believe to be happening as Israel executes the war in Gaza, or was executing the war in Gaza. I disagree it's a genocide, but I support your right 100% to make criticisms of a government without being classed as anti-Semitic. It's a dangerous thing to go down this path, and I know we're getting very nuanced, but this is the very essence of today's topic, right? This is why you go, well, okay, do you want professional jurors that understand the difference between anti-Semitism and criticism of an Israeli government?
As opposed to?
Because this is where I will say someone that's uneducated is highly unlikely to understand the nuance in that difference.
Right. That's right.
Right. And by educated, I'm using that very loose definition. But yeah, and all these things are the problems why professional jurors, this is why you can see, right? There's a, yep, we should do it. And there's a, no way we shouldn't do it. It's probably equally 50-50. Yeah. You could be put on either side of this argument, and someone hold a gun to your head and say, you've got to make a solid argument why we should have them. You've got to make a solid argument why we shouldn't. And you could make equally strong cases.
Are juries about accuracy or about legitimacy?
I'd like to think both. I think that, well, the very essence of the jury of your peers, I think, is the legitimacy. And I'd like to think they're relatively accurate in their decision making.
I like it, Dave. I like it. What about some Australian aspects here, Dave? In Australia, juries are constitutional. statutory feature of the criminal justice system, but not universally required. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, and that's why I say you can have a judge-only trial. I'm certainly not an expert on when and how, and some people request them, and I'm not sure what circumstances you could have. Then there are others where it's imposed.
That's at federal level, right? But at state and territory level, juries are used mainly in serious criminal trials, right? But increasingly, most civil trials no longer use juries, and magistrate courts operate entirely without juries.
Yeah, and that's why I say is we already have situations where that, but they're certainly the lower end. They're not murder charges. They're not terrorism charges. They're at the lower end of the scale stuff. Yeah, and to be honest, it would be you can imagine how ridiculous it would be for some of the low level stuff to have a jury trial based on did you steal the hubba bubba or not.
I know. A couple of things, Dave. So we know that in Australia, jurors are drawn from electoral rolls,
yes,
or driver license databases or a combination thereof. They receive minimal training, basic written directions on the day or before the day, and some judicial instruction, which is obviously sometimes I think a bit complex for them, a bit abstract, who knows. I don't think that's sufficient. I think that's an area we could invest in, right?
But the trouble with that is that because, as I mentioned, right, when you turn up, you don't know if you're going to be impaneled. So, I was there for 2.5 hours only for, a plea to be done and off we went and not needed for another trial. So imagine putting everyone through 3 or 4 hours on the off chance that you're going to be.
Get picked, I get it. But it's strange.
I mean, you could say, okay, we're only going to do it once you're going to be impaneled. But, yeah.
So the issue is, Dave, in terms of judicial direction and trying to help inform the potential jurors in terms of what their obligations might be, it says here Australian judges are required to give increasingly detailed jury directions, legal standards, elements of offences, warnings about unreliable evidence, directions on unconscious bias.
And this is where I get back to where I said a magistrate or a judge running their courtroom correctly will.
I know, but Dave, I'm there, right?
Yeah.
Up until 2 weeks ago, I was doing my job. I got budgets due. I got a couple of kids. I'm trying to sort. I rock in, and then the judge has given me chapter and verse about here are all the things I got to be thinking about. Mate, I just want my coffee. You know what I mean?
Yes, but if you're going to turn around and you get impaneled and they give you 3 or 4 hours of this same training,
that's right.
So it's better. In some ways, are you going to remember that training when you say, I'm really thinking about that budget while I'm sitting here zoned out, or I'm thinking about my wife's driving me nuts, or I've got to do whatever with the kids? Or is it better that in the moment a judge pulls it up in the court and says, directs a jury on a specific thing and explains in that moment why?
Yep. So
rather than try and remember what I said in that 4 hours.
So professionalisation already exists, Dave. So judges sit alone in complex commercial cases.
Yep.
Right? Administrative tribunals decide, some pretty significant matters without any juries, and the royal commissions assess evidence professionally. So there's already a professional element to a lot of outcomes driven out of our legal system, right?
Yes.
So therefore, wouldn't it stand to reason that we could extend that potentially and take that down to the next level in terms of professionalisation of jurors?
Look, as I said, you can make the argument for it, but I think inherently, the risks outweigh the rewards in this one. I think we've already got a bifurcated society as it is between, the educated class and the non-educated class. I think the last thing we need to do is as you mentioned, right, take, once you're in that system, take the last element out of it. You feel there's an aspect there that is very much like yourself.
Yep. Yeah. So Dave, just as we wrap up, we've discussed like some potential reform ideas. So this hybrid approach, right? Yeah. What about where the case is highly technical and complex, like cybersecurity or a large fraud in financial services? You bring in a professional jury.
Well, that's where you have expert witnesses that you come in for that stuff anyway, right?
Yeah, but I'm just thinking testimony. Like in like a really technical and a cyber fraud that's impacted 1 million pension holders of some super fund and something's gone on, and now you're going after the directors of the fund or the trustee. Sorry,
you do, but does that require technical expertise?
I don't know. Would it help? Would it lead to a better outcome or a more accurate outcome? I don't know.
I could easily say it would, because this gets back to my very argument of having politicians holding portfolios of which they've never worked therein. So I'd like to think that, okay, it's a particular aspect, but actually just thinking through this, maybe that's where you're onto something. Maybe we don't need professional jurors, but maybe what we need are cases are categorized.
That's what I meant.
So
Literally,
you might say this is a fraud case, but it's within the ICT sector.
yeah,
This is a fraud case within health services.
and you just drop people in.
So what it is it's a jury of your peers, but you need to come out of the health services sector.
That's
or
right.
You've got to come out of the IT sector.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a way in which you do it. And what you're then doing is it's a jury of your peers, because you'd think, well, okay, if you've engaged in fraud in the health sector, you must be working in the health sector. So they are your peers, but they have a better understanding of what's being put to them, rather than the technical aspects flying over their head.
I get it.
The one solution we haven't discussed is the Norman Schwarzkopf solution, which is, it's not up to us to play God. We just arrange the meeting. So we could just kill everyone and then let God decide.
That's right. That's right. So let's finish up on this, Dave. If you were charged with a multi-million-dollar corporate fraud, this is Dave Lodge, involving forensic accounting and digital evidence, would you prefer a trained jury or 12 citizens trying to decode spreadsheets?
This would never happen, because I'd never get caught.
You in a spreadsheet.
I'd never get caught.
I'd love it.
So I'd want experts.
In that one there, okay?
I would.
Now, what about if you were charged over protest activity, police conduct, some type of social issue? Would you want a professionalised jury steeped in institutional norms, or ordinary Australians bringing lived experience into the room?
Ordinary Australians.
Because they would get it,
Well, protest is very much about the grassroots, right?
especially in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most places you don't. Well, there are professional protesters, paid protesters that go on around the world, especially in the US. So as we talk through this, you're getting situations where you go, professional jury is best here, my peers is best over there.
Yeah. I think
The one thing I'd probably say is just don't get yourself before the courts, and you don't need to worry about that.
So I'd wrap up saying that the Australian justice system already relies heavily on professionals. We've seen that. The use of juries is actually potentially, I'd love to know what the percentage splits are, but there's a lot of magistrates and judges doing their own thing at the moment in terms of no use of juries. There are risks if you did go to a professional jury that I think are significant and would need to be managed. But there is some potential there, I think, for the increasing use in certain trials of professional jurors.
Yeah, there's probably scope for it to be investigated and start to say in limited capacity. We could, and no pun intended, but you could sort of do it trial and error.
Oh, I like that.
So
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
What do I say, Dave?
You have a right to be wrong.
Take care, mate.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. Like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.